particularly excited about this.
Okay.
You know, I think we've been brainstorming this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We're finally here.
And what is this?
This is a listener's opportunity to get some unique insights on diverse backgrounds, on different stories. But first, my name is Kaila. I work here at Procore, and I'm just really, really thrilled about the podcast that you put together. But before I go into more, tell me about yourself.
I'm Aksum. People know me as Ox. I also work here at Procore. I work in the learning development department. I focus a lot more on intern program initiatives as well as some special media projects, and this would fall under that.
But a quick side note, you have podcast experience.
I do have my own personal podcast. If you guys feel like listening to that, we'll plug it later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I was, as much as I was excited for it and I was looking forward to this, I'm so upset that I had to miss the first episode. And you did it with Coach, one of my favorite people here at Procore. Give me a little preview of what you guys talked about.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak with Coach, or Greg Gills, as his mother named him. But we talked about, how he got the nickname Coach. But we also talked about his passion about diversity and inclusion and why it's so important in an organization. We even touched on a story that one of your favorites is.
One of my favorite stories. I listened to your podcast when it was over in the session, and he just talks about the story with his son. I'm going to stop myself. Don't want to go into too much detail there.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a good listen. It's one of my favorite stories. It just gives a great personal life lesson in there too.
It was fun. It was really fun. And I'm really glad that you guys are going to get to hear this. You're going to hear a new side of Coach. So here it is.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Who am I? Depends on who you ask.
Okay.
So,
to a young professional that's applying to this company or is working or has been working here for a year and somehow just didn't meet you.
I got to say, when I first started at Procore, I was going through the recruitment process myself, and one of the recruiters asked me, Andy Lee is her name, and she asked me, she said, would you mind if we called you Coach? Mm-hmm. And of course, I said, you can call me what you want, just call me with a job offer, right, and we'll talk. But that really has kind of stuck and really endeared itself to me, because at first I was a little bit, it felt a little bit weird to have grown men saying, "Hey, Coach," But when I think about my role and what I really enjoy doing, which is inspiring people to be their best selves and do their best work, and sitting back and watching them grow and display their talents, I feel like when I used to coach high school football and I'd watch a kid, cover a play or make a tackle that 6 months before they didn't believe they could do. They could always do it, but they didn't know they could do it. They didn't believe they could do it. And just a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of push, a little bit of allowing them to go out there and try, allowed them to do it. I got great intrinsic satisfaction from that. And so when I see that here, when I see somebody getting promoted, when I see somebody just enjoying the experience of working here, and if I feel like I had even just a small part of that, that's what gets me up in the morning. Mm-hmm. So if you want to know who I am, I'm that person who wants to see you succeed and try my best to do what I can to create the space and opportunity for you to be successful. And if young employees feel that way, then I think at the end of the day, I've been successful.
I believe that the best coach is able to unlock internal and, the best potential out of every person. And obviously you feel the same way. That's not a skill set that everyone has or sees. When did you realize that that's something that you appreciate doing, that coaching, that unlocking that internal potential? And when did you realize that you could do that at a corporate scale?
So I'm going to give two examples, if that's all right.
Okay.
One is more personal, and the other one is actually something that has driven me into this realm. So first, again, I mentioned I coached high school football, mm-hmm. and my first coaching job was actually coaching my brother's high school football team. And I was working with the defensive coordinator, and we were putting together a really good defense. Now, mind you, I've played football my whole life. And so I got up to college, and then the professional teams told me, "Oh, you're not going to be playing football anymore." But that was a good lesson, and I got to go back down and share some of what I had learned. So I've had some pretty good experiences playing. Nothing ever fulfilled me like watching my brother's team compete for the state championship, and watching him really blossom, and watching some of the players who, at one point, we weren't sure if they were even going to make the team, step up and make big plays in a state championship game. Now, the game ended in a tie, but that's just because neither team could really score on each other. And, being a defensive coach, I felt really good about how we performed and how my team performed. By the way, state of Arizona, no state championship game should end in a tie. You guys changed those doggone rules.
There was no kickoff or anything, or there's
no. It was the time ended and boom.
So did they cut the trophy in half? I had that.
No, I think they maybe organized a swap deal. You get it for 3 months, and we get it for a semester. But yeah, so I really realized that at that point, I realized that I actually enjoyed that a lot more than some of my biggest personal accomplishments on the football field, and so I carried that with me. Then the other piece came when I was working in law school in HR. And I was working with a manager who was a really, really senior manager. He had good experience technically, was one of the most technically gifted people at that company. And he was having a lot of trouble with people and getting his people motivated and figuring out how to work. And we sat down and I was talking to him, and it just clicked. I walked him through some scenarios, asked him some questions, and then at the end of the conversation, he told me, he said, Greg, they didn't call me coach back then.
Right.
He said, Greg, this company has spent probably a couple $100,000 in developing me technically, how to, do things from an engineering perspective that maybe I couldn't do before. They spent not even 5% of that teaching me how to deal with people. And I have 15 people that I'm responsible for on my team right now. And when I thought about that, and I thought, wow, the investment that we're not making in leaders and the advice and the coaching and the guidance that they're not getting, it trickles down into the organization. His team was failing not because they couldn't technically do the work.
Right.
They couldn't figure out how to work together. They couldn't figure out how to be a team. And he couldn't figure out how to coach them.
Right.
And so working with him and seeing him be successful and fix that problem and get his team back together. In that quarter, it was interesting. They rose their productivity 24% that quarter. And I can't obviously take any credit for that, but I was there and I watched it and I was part of it, and I felt like if I even helped a little bit, man, I could do this for a career.
Right.
And that's what made me decide to go this direction.
The practice of people development within a company, why is that so foreign? And I mean, I understand everything is a trend. Was there ever a time, to your knowledge, that people development was focused on and then dropped off? Or why is it all of a sudden such an important thing within a company?
Well, we're in a knowledge and information economy. And if you're in a knowledge economy, then literally the value of your company is what's in between your employees' ears, their thoughts, their ideas, their innovations. Now, when you think about industrial age America, the most valuable thing in those buildings were the buildings and the machines.
Right.
The people were kind of disposable.
Right.
So most management theory still comes from the old industrial age, right?
Right.
So there's a big shift in how we see people, how we value people, how we collaborate. It's interesting, just a few years ago, when we needed new software, what did? We went to the store, we bought something in a box.
Right.
We opened the box, we put the disk into our computer,
Yeah.
and we downloaded the software. And
Yeah.
3 months later, new software would come out.
Right.
and we'd have to go buy that and download it. And nowadays, everything's in the cloud, right? And information and updates, they happen instantly. And people have to be able to adapt because there's this influx of information and change constantly. So preparing our people for change, which is anti to human nature, right? We just don't like change.
No.
And allowing them the space to feel comfortable with change and to innovate and grow and develop is why I think innovation and technology is taken off, and the pace of change is just amazing. The fact that we aren't going crazy with all the information that is thrown at us every day is a testament to how we work together and we share with each other and we develop empathy for each other. And I don't mean Procore, I just mean people in general. Those who can do that well and can make that transformation well, I think they've got a clear advantage over the rest of their competitors.
It's so funny how the more we get involved with technology, the more emphasis on people has kind of come about, like the people relations, people management. Another area that you are very passionate about here is diversity and inclusion. Why is that so important for you?
I think it's important because I've been in places in organizations where good ideas were only good ideas based on who brought them. And I saw how that set the company back. I remember actually having conversations with people about, no. Let's let this person present. Because if this person presents, it's not going to be seen or heard in the same way. Think about that. That's one meeting, one conversation extra that we shouldn't have had to have. If we can get to a place where we understand that, hey, we brought people in, really smart people, really talented people in the door, and they're going to come with some different ideas, and they're going to come with some different experiences. They're going to help us shape our product or our project or our program. And we can make sure that we at least hear those ideas so that they feel heard. We're going to get the best innovation. We're going to get the best ideas out on the table. And we'll have a really good array of ideas to choose from. If it's not like that, if we're having to manipulate and obfuscate to get an idea out on the table, we've just slowed down our pace. We just slowed down our ability to innovate. And we've made some people who bring experience and ideas, and that we're, by the way, paying money to, not as engaged, wanting to take their ball and go home. And it would be bad if those people leave the company. What's worse is if they're engaged and they stay, or disengaged, and they stay.
Right. Yeah.
So making sure that all voices are heard, making sure that people feel valued is important to me. And particularly as someone who has run into some of those self-doubts and been in those situations where I didn't know if I belonged, I didn't know if my voice was heard, and I had someone stand up for me, and it's allowed me to progress my career. And boy, it'd be a shame, and honestly, it would be a display of a deficit in leadership if I didn't turn around and do that for others. So those are some of the reasons I'm very passionate about it. I've benefited, and I think that the people who've helped me and elevated me have allowed me to help companies benefit from the ideas, innovations, and tools that I bring to the table. And I want to make sure that if I can help this business, this company, and these people experience that.
Are there 3 or 4 or 5 steps that you could recommend an organization taking? Because, again, like people management, diversity and inclusion is also a newer hot topic that you hear about a lot of places are focusing on. What are some steps an organization could take to even assess what they even need to do?
Well, first of all, you have to have it's like a GPS, right? It's great to know where you want to go. That's the first thing you got to figure out is, where do I want to be? What is diversity and inclusion, and what does an inclusive workplace look like for me? Right? So you got to define that, and it's going to be different for different companies. But having a target is really important, right?
Right.
So set that first. Then you got to know where you're at. So you got to assess, ask, do surveys, focus groups, get the information. Now you've got your destination and you know where you are.
Right.
Once you got those two pieces, then you can start plotting your course and making sure that, oh, by the way, we include people along the way who can help us in understanding some of these issues.
Right.
So as you're plotting your course, make sure that you understand what success looks like each step of the way. To get from A to Z, what does B look like? What does F look like, right? And how do we know when we've hit F? So once you've done that, and I know that this sounds like, kind of a very broad speak,
Right.
and it is, and I'm happy to talk more in depth if need be.
Right.
But starting to take those steps. But it all begins in the beginning, right? It all starts with just asking the question, where do we want to be?
Right.
What does that even look like? And then being honest with yourself about where we are. Then we can start planning on how to get there. And one of the quotes that we heard from Vernice Flagirl Armour, and she was someone who we brought in to speak at a leadership conference, and she wasn't talking about the topic of diversity, but I think this is really important for businesses and for people to understand. And she said sometimes the path is the journey, right? And the idea behind that is, you know where you're starting and you know where you want to get to. Man, you might have to take some detours. You might have to turn around a couple of times. You might have to go on a different freeway than you had planned.
Right.
But what's important is that you get there. And how you get there can change a little bit. And you have to be willing to be flexible and understand that there might be some variations. But again, sometimes the path is the journey. So
within the Procore community, I think that a lot of people would say that you're an influential character here at the company. I mean, you're one of the first faces people will see when they start working here. You're someone that people go to for a lot of their issues or, for affirmations and whatnot. How do you feel, and how do you handle, or what are your responsibilities you feel being such an influential, employee here at a company where a lot of people look up to you?
Well, I mean, so first of all, I need to make sure that my kid and my wife understand that, because
we'll send them the video.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know that actually translates all over the place, but one of the things that I think is important and that I pride myself on is being approachable. I don't take myself too seriously. I use a lot of self-deprecating humor because, quite frankly, there's a lot to joke about, when I'm talking about myself. So, you never get too self-important. We're all people. Mm-hmm. Everybody has great ideas. Everybody has good thoughts, and everybody wants to make a contribution. So if somebody wants to honor me with asking my opinion on a topic or something that they're going through, wow. I mean, that's an honor, right? So, yeah, I want to be able to lean in and step in and give some advice, and I can't always promise it's good advice, but or if the situation demands coaching, maybe do some coaching and not give advice and just ask questions. Approach them with some curiosity and help them find the answers that they're looking for within themselves. I think that's how I want people to see me, but I just don't take myself too seriously. And, I look at my role here as, being available in a way that allows people to approach and feel comfortable asking questions. It's important that people, when they reflect on coming to work at Procore, think about what's it like to be here. And not just to be here in the sense of I'm physically here, but to exist at Procore as a person, as a employee, as a teammate, as a colleague, you know, and if I can in any way help that be a good experience, then I'm all in.
A couple more questions before we wrap it up.
Sure.
I think learning and development and people development is a very new topic for a lot of people. If someone is interested in getting involved in people development, what are your recommendations for how they go about that, whether that's here at Procore or at their personal organizations, or if they're in college right now, or or they want to revamp their careers?
Wow. There's a lot of things there. There's not an organization around, and that's a volunteer organization, that's a college class, a team that you're on, where people aren't actively getting or seeking some development.
Mm-hmm.
So first things first, if you know you have a passion for it and an interest in it, look for those opportunities. One of the big things I learned when I was working, in the business is that not all businesses invest in it. Almost all businesses recognize the need for it. So if I can step in and fill that gap by suggesting something or taking over something or organizing different people who have different skill sets to come together and teach about what they're doing so that we all can share in that knowledge, that's something that I've actually done in multiple places in my career. And it's always worked for me. But we are all, and I shouldn't say all, but I think mostly we're asking questions. We're trying to figure out, how do I get better at this? How do I do this better? Heck, even if I'm super duper lazy, I'm thinking, how can I do this the easiest way possible?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's where those ideas of growing and development can kind of get sparked. If you're really interested in it, volunteer, take some classes, participate, right? Hey, I want to be on this project that, my company's HR team or L&D team or management team or enablement team is rolling out. I'd just like to participate just so I can get into that learning process.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you've done is you started building up a base of projects that you've worked on.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also really gotten a chance to see if maybe this isn't something I like. Maybe it looks cool from the outside, but once I'm in, I'm not that interested in it. But then taking the time to, get any certifications. I always take certification classes.
Right.
I don't know that it matters 100%, especially at this stage of my career.
Right.
But if I'm not still learning, how can I be professing
Sure.
about the importance of learning?
Right.
So stay curious, lean into volunteering and getting those things going, having conversations with people in that space to find out what the opportunities are locally. And then, taking a chance on yourself if those things aren't present and taking a class or going to school or whatever. Those are all opportunities to get in. And once you get in, it's a pretty fun and rewarding profession.
Do you have, I don't know if role model is cheesy, but do you have like a role model or a thing that you look to for inspiration or to help push you at times? Or that's help guide you?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think for different phases in my life,
Sure.
I go through, I've had different mentors and different people that have really helped propel me to the next step. The interesting thing, one of the most inspirational people in my life right now, and this is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but again, I don't take myself that seriously.
I'll take lactose pills. It's okay.
Yeah, right. Yes. A little lactate on the table, please.
Yeah.
It's my son. His curiosity, his genuine interest in other people, what they're doing, how they're doing, is something that amazes me. I always think, what if we approached each day like a child? Just this morning. I hope his mom's not listening, but I took him to get a donut because he likes donuts.
Yeah.
And we have a donut shop right by the house. Before school, I figured he was a good boy. We'll go get a donut as a little treat. And we walk in, and there's a gentleman sitting there by himself. And my son hears him talking on the phone. talking about the Super Bowl, and he says, "Hey, you know, the Rams, they're a pretty good team. Who's your favorite team?" And then by the end of that conversation, and it turned into a full-on conversation,
Yeah.
the gentleman had a smile from ear to ear.
Yeah.
He was asking me, "Wow, is he always this curious, this inquisitive?"
Right.
Just seeing how he lifted that person's spirits, lifted my spirits, the people inside of the donut shop were all smiling, and just being curious and engaging someone and giving them attention. It was amazing to watch that transformation of that conversation. I'll give you another example. We went on vacation to this place in Mexico, a resort down there, and took him. And he, is bilingual. My son's bilingual. His mom's Mexican, and he speaks Spanish and English. He speaks them equally well.
Right.
So we're on vacation, and there's all these families and kids there, right? And I'd say about 40% were Spanish-speaking families. About 50% probably English-speaking. But there wasn't a big mix of people who spoke both languages, at least not fluently.
Right.
And so my son, who was 5 at the time, is out there leading a soccer game. And he organized it by just helping to communicate and bridge that gap. We had these groups of kids who literally were on 2 different sides of the pool.
Right.
They wanted to play together, but they couldn't really communicate.
Right.
They didn't know if it was okay to approach each other.
Yeah.
And he would go over and talk to one and talk to the other.
Right.
And then next thing I know, he's bringing them together, and they're all playing soccer together.
Right.
Right? And having a great time. And he became almost like the mayor of that resort. Everywhere he went, the staff was like, "Hi, Gregory."
Right.
Or,
They knew him first name.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing to watch his curiosity, his interest in people, his communication, his, "Hey, let's bring these people together."
Right.
So we can all have a good time.
Right.
It was amazing. And days when I get a little frustrated and I think about that and I think about, wow, why are these people doing that? And I think, have I asked?
Right.
Have I been curious? Right? Have I been thinking about how I can bring this
That empathy.
issue? Yeah. And so right now, I'm learning things from my 5, now 6-year-old son that are lessons that you read about in books and you forget, and then you see them in real life.
Yeah.
When with some childlike innocence, and as they say, a child shall lead them, right?
Right. Sounds like I didn't know coaching was a hereditary thing, but it sounds like your son's got that too. Well, Coach, I really appreciate your time. This has been really fun. I personally appreciate everything you've done for me, and I see how you interact with everybody, and it is inspiring to me. But keep on doing that, and thank you for your time.
Hey, well, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. Good to see you again. Let's go get some lunch.
Let's go get some lunch.
All right.